Hello YouTube, this is Arrow with Airsoft DC, part 7 on an introduction to Airsoft. Today we're going to get into the true meat of Airsoft, the guns themselves. Now, this is the first part video of an introduction to Airsoft. This is good. Now we're going to have probably 9 or so videos just focusing on Airsoft guns and their different aspects, how they work, different propellants and things that will run Airsoft guns.
We're going to need a lot more money for this video.
Oh yeah. Well, that and editing. So, this is just a very beginning, broad scope of Airsoft. Now, if you are truly beginning Airsoft, you'll probably want to start with one...
Arrow, don't strip!
No, not that. You're going to want to start with one important thing, and that is spring guns. These guns are very simple. They have a spring in them that pulls a piston, that pulls them forward, obviously, in that case.
It actually has a piston.
But it has a piston inside. So when you pull the spring back, it pulls back the piston at the same time. So when you pull the trigger, the spring flies forward, pulling the piston forward and pushing air up. This is as simple as it gets. This is a pretty cheap $17 basic Airsoft spring pistol. Chances are, if you are beginning Airsoft, you're going to get one of these first. I did, Connor did, everyone who's pretty much ever started Airsoft has pretty much got on the boat using one of these guys, because they're cheap, they're simple, and they're essentially disposable. These guns, as nice as they are, this one's actually pretty hefty and largely internally metal. It's very affordable, and if it broke, I wouldn't feel real bad about it, because they're cheap. So, if you want to get into Airsoft, that's how it's going to work. Now, when you get more serious in Airsoft, you're going to start working on things like this. Now, you're going to notice I didn't put an orange tip on it. The only reason I'm doing that right now is for internet video purposes, and I'm in, as you can see, my own private residence. This is a fence. I'm in a cornered off area of my own house. This is private residencies, and I'm legally obligated, and I'm allowed to have an orange tip as long as I'm here within private residence. If I walked out in the street right now, I would be within violation of the laws of airsofting, and I could be arrested and possibly shot for having a non-orange tip on an airsoft gun. So, if you, in the future, if you see us with airsoft guns, mostly this one, with a black tip on it, the only reason I have that is I'm probably within my own private residence, or, in the other case, a certified airsoft field, which it is also allowed because it is certified airsoft.
Now, also, when Arrow says you may be shot, he does not mean by the police, meaning firing squad. He means potentially by a private residence trying to defend themselves and their fellow neighbors.
That's right. I'm talking neighborhood watch, because if they see something like this in the street, if you live in the right area, there's a good chance you'll find gun owners. And those people will not accept seeing these in private residence. I apologize for the PCA, but it has to be said. Otherwise, we can't move on with airsofting, and you shouldn't be playing it if you're not safe, because you'll ruin it for the rest of us. Apologize for the PCA, on to the actual video. As I've said before, once you get past spring guns, chances are you're going to move on to AEGs, or automatic electric guns. These basically do what you can with a spring gun, except it's done with the power of battery. I'm curious to see if I have a battery. Yes, I do. As you can see, I was firing full auto there. But another great thing is, you can fire semi-auto and full auto using these particular formats. Now,
hey Arrow, what is semi-auto?
Semi-auto, for those who aren't gun owners or don't know much about firearms in general, means when I pull the trigger, it fires. And it only does it once. See, I'm still holding the trigger, nothing's happening. If I move to full auto, using the selector switch here, which lets me determine what I want to use, I can fire multiple shots without having to press the trigger. Now, it is also, we'll talk about important things you should be doing in Airsoft, and how you should treat things like this. How you should treat particular guns like this. But like I said, remember when I said a spring pulls a piston back? That's what this is doing, except it's using a battery or an external energy source.
Why don't you show them, Arrow?
Yes, I will. It uses a battery and external energy source to push the piston back. In fact, I won't show you the battery, because I'll get into that in my AEG video, which we will cover in the future. But I can show you how it works in detail. Here, let me move up for you guys. Alright, so, as you can see...
There's a fence.
Yes, but spring here, piston is actually within this cylindrical blue, and here's the piston here also. Take a look at the tip. Now when I fire it on semi-auto, we don't recommend you do this, and we'll demonstrate again why in the AEG video, but the piston moves forward, the spring goes back, and it pulls the cycle. It cycles. So, spring goes back, pushes the pit, and then releases the piston, shoots it forward, and releases air that propels a BB. That is an AEG, and probably more detail than we need to get into, but this is an introduction to Airsoft, and we will cover this in even greater detail in the future. Also, something you'll probably get into in the future will be gas guns. I'm afraid I don't have a gas gun with me.
Sorry.
Or Connor. And so we do not have gas guns with us. But gas guns essentially run on a similar principle, except instead of being air within the piston that is just the air outside that it pulls from, it actually uses a special external energy source. Propane, if you're like some people. Green gas, which is essentially propane, except it has its own lubricant, so you don't have to worry as much about lubricant. Or CO2, which is the small 12-gram tanks you get for whatever they're used for, mostly this purpose. And BB guns. Now, it's important to note that they all essentially do the same thing, and that is propel a BB forward using air power. But how they achieve it is what I've been demonstrating to you today. Very different. Again, don't worry about starting with a spring pistol. Just use that to hop on board, get comfortable with it, then you can mature to greater and greater tiers of expense and use and probably maintenance, and eventually you'll be getting to the point where we are, where we're owning $200+ guns, having to maintain them pretty regularly, wanting to upgrade them, make them better, being more serious with it, having more gear. Eventually it just blossoms from where you start, from the starting point, and that is the humble beginnings of little spring pistols. So, that is a brief and yet somehow lengthy introduction to Airsoft. This is Arrow with Airsoft DC, and an introduction to Airsoft, so have a nice day.